Light is healing. In syncretism, the subject of light is crucial and fundamental. To understand how light works and its properties, and in particular its healing property, is so crucial with syncretism. This is why I'm with LifeWave. LifeWave understand light and how it works and how it heals. These patches emanate signals into the body. The body, being already self-wise, knows how to utilize those signals for regeneration, for energy, etc. So that's why I would say go LifeWave and go to the light.
Physician who's had my license for 40 years and had a very strong biochemistry background, I can say, and seeing what's happening with the X39, I can say without a doubt that this is the most significant medical breakthrough in my lifetime.
Now, oh, by the way, did you all have a great time last night with the Doobie Brothers? Awesome. Okay, well, no question you're all awake. What we're going to do now is we have a tremendous amount of information that we are going to cover today on anti-aging, age reversal, and exploring the limits of human lifespan. So let's go ahead and get into that now. So we want to know, what are the limits of human lifespan? There's a lot of ways to look at this, and there are many differing opinions in the scientific community. We're going to start at what might at first seem to be a little bit of an unusual place when we're talking about the subject of stopping aging and age reversal, and that is it possible to regrow a lost limb? As you're going to see, the two of these phenomena are intimately connected. They're actually different expressions of the same thing. So we're going to look at some work from Tufts University on the subject of the biodome. And what's so interesting about this is that this is, if you take a frog that does not have the ability to regrow a lost limb and you sever it, and then you're taking 5 biochemicals that act as signaling molecules, and you place this over the amputation site just for 24 to 48 hours. Within a period of anywhere from 9 to 18 months, after that initial signal, the limb will completely regrow or nearly regrow. So, what's important about this is that it just required the initial impulse of information, and then it required having the fuel to drive the regenerative process, the energy, the amino acids, the protein synthesis. And this is something that LifeWave does extraordinarily well. Our patches are a communication system that feed the body with information. So this tells us that this type of technology is within reach, the ability to regrow lost limbs. So we have to wonder, how far away are we from being able to do this in human beings? So let's examine this a little bit further. Biodome was placed at the injury site for 24 hours after an 18-month process. So this is information transfer. In the case of these experiments at Tufts, this was all done through biochemistry, but ultimately we know that it's light that controls the biochemical reactions within the body. Light initiates these communications. The 18-month process was for regeneration. So this tells us that there is a limit at which new proteins can be synthesized. However, we've actually found in our experiments with a device called the double helix conductor that it's possible to overcome biological limitations on protein synthesis. But in any case, the important part of this is that regeneration requires energy. So you can think about this in your own life if you have an injury that has not healed. First, introduce the signal to initiate healing. And that can come from a variety of different means, the correct biochemistry or light, such as with our patches. And then you need the energy to drive the process. So this is where we have a healthy diet. You get your proper nutrition. You need enough protein in your diet to supply all of the raw materials that are required for regeneration. So when we're going to look at a very complex subject, such as human aging, we can distill this down into the principles of energy and information. So in everything that we're going to be covering today, I'd like you to keep this in mind. Keep coming back to this idea. If it seems too complicated, keep coming back to this idea that this is all being driven through energy and information. So why would aging be any different than this? If we provide the information and the energy to a biological system, we should be able to reverse human aging. And as you're going to see, this is absolutely possible. So one of the questions then is, if we know what it takes to drive mitochondrial energy, which is going to be the source of energy production in our cells, where do we get the information from to drive the regenerative process? So we're going to look at clues. And we're going to look at nature, and we're going to also look historically at human aging and see what we can find. And a place to start, interestingly enough, is story of the tree of life. So we look at this quote from Genesis 3:22. And as you know, the Bible was written in Hebrew, but we're looking at it in English right now, and it's important for us to have that frame of reference. So God says, okay, well, now that man has sinned, if he eats from the fruit of the tree of life, he'll live forever. So Adam lived 930 years. The question that we ask ourselves is this a real, factual account, a historical account? Is that a real number? Or is this just a story that was made up? Is there anything that we can point to, any information that would allow us to see, is this a real, true number? Because the implication is that if these ages that are recorded in the Bible are true and factual, it means that human beings have already lived to be more than 900 years old, and now this is a process of rediscovery. We have to understand how was that possible. So we're going to convert the English over to the original Hebrew and then use gematria to convert those letters back over into numbers. So if we take the phrase tree of life, depending on the calculator that we use, we come up with the number 66. What's interesting about this is that 66 is a harmonic of the number 528, if we think of this in musical terms. So in other words, we're going to look at the number 66 as a frequency, and then we're going to double that frequency to get a harmonic, and we come up with 528. So we look in the literature, and interestingly enough, what we see is that a frequency of 528 hertz has been used to regenerate damaged DNA. So incredibly, embedded into the story of Genesis and the story of the tree of life is numerical information that tells us how to regenerate damaged DNA. There is no way that could have been known thousands of years ago, if we believe in the way history was telling us. But let's look at some clinical studies, because this is actually very interesting. We're in California. I thought some of the men here might be interested in knowing how do you elevate testosterone, right? It's not summer, but we are still in California. So there's not a local Radio Shack, I think, that's open anymore where you can go out and get a frequency generator. But you men, you might want to know 528 hertz elevates testosterone production. Pretty cool. So this is an example of how we're using energy to control the biochemistry of the body, not necessary to get external injections of testosterone. Another example, if we use a different way to calculate the tree of life number, it comes up with 159. Now, in this example, what we're going to want to do is convert that over into a wavelength of light. And you can do this very simply with an online calculator. There's a very well-known formula for converting frequencies over into nanometers, and light is in the nanometer range. So in this particular case, we convert the tree of life frequency over into a wavelength of light, and we come up with 857 nanometers. Why is that significant? Well, research has shown in this band of light that this activates mitochondrial energy. And time again, what's been demonstrated in clinical studies is that one of the principal reasons why we age is because of a decline in mitochondrial function. In fact, when we restore mitochondrial function to a young, healthy state, we see the age of the cell become younger. So again, incredibly embedded into the Holy Bible, in the story of the tree of life, is frequency and light information that we can use to improve our quality of life by restoring mitochondrial function, and have a key in understanding how we can stop and reverse human aging. So, what can we take from all of this? All living systems depend on energy to survive. You stop energy production in a cell, and the cell dies, so this is known. All living systems depend on information. We're constantly collecting information in our environment, and we're responding to it. So our cells are constantly responding and adapting with this very complex communication system of information using light. Experiments demonstrated that it is possible to regenerate a lost limb in a species that doesn't have this capability simply by providing energy and information. And most importantly, when we're looking at quality of life and improving quality of life, experiments have shown that it is in fact possible to reverse the age of the cells using this biochemical information. And we see evidence that the information presented in the Holy Bible is in fact true. So this is exciting. So it means that the potential exists that human beings have already lived to be over 900 years old, and now we just have to rediscover how that could be possible. So next up, let's take a look at what the current limits of human lifespan are and what we can do about that. Okay. So there's many different views in the scientific community on limits of human lifespan. Dr. Sinclair is focused on this subject, and I'm happy to see that he believes that there are no limits of human lifespan, like many people in the anti-aging and age reversal community. But let's take a look at this a little bit deeper. Here's an article that's from Nature, a well-respected journal, and looking at the evidence for human lifespan. And in this article, the author states, well, we might expect that humans might live to be a maximum of 115 years old. Overall, that's pretty good, I think, for most people, but let's look at it a little bit differently. One of the things that's interesting about this is we've had people live to be over 120 years old. Now, I don't think most people want to live to be 120 and necessarily look like this. No offense to this young lady here. So the key is we don't want to be 120 or 150 or 200 and look that way. Premise behind this is that you're reversing the biological age of the cell. So there's no difference in appearance between a 25 or 30-year-old and someone that's 120 or 150 years old. That's the goal to shoot for. Many other scientists in the age reversal community believe that there's no upper limit to human lifespan, and it's more statistically, what are your odds over time of avoiding accidents, avoiding serious health problems. But we know that information is always doubling very, very quickly now. So if we live another 10 years, the information, the technology that we'll have access to is many times greater than where we are today. So what's the most optimistic view on human lifespan in the conventional scientific community and beyond? In age reversal community, they say it's about 1,000 years or so, which interestingly lines up with the numbers that we see in the book of Genesis. So what does science tell us about what we can expect in our lifetime now? There's some articles, again, out in Nature, which suggest that given current technology, they obviously don't know about LifeWave, they would put human lifespan somewhere around 100 years or so, which I don't think makes sense at all, given the pace of development. So we look to nature. In our labs, we study biomimetics. So this means we want to look to natural living systems for answers. Why try to invent a new technology when nature already provides us with a guide? We simply have to study species that defy normal human aging and then see what we can learn and then apply those principles over to human beings. So let's take a quick review of some species that age in a different way than human beings, or they don't age at all. We'll start with the bowhead whale. Longest living mammal, up to about 200 years of age, and they have a slower metabolism than human beings, and they live in very cold waters, so this is a contributor to their very long lifespan. Now we can go way over to the other side, and we look at the glass sponges with lifespans of 10,000 to 15,000 years. King's holly in Tasmania, 43,600 years. There's a single colony of Mediterranean seagrass, over 100,000 years old. So there are plenty of examples that we can study. You say, well, this is a plant. We can look at the species of bat, brant bat. They should only live to be 2 or 3 years old because their metabolism is so rapid. And when the metabolism is faster, that means you're producing much more oxidative stress, and the oxidative stress damages healthy cells. But interestingly, we can study the bat, and what we find is that they've developed a mechanism. They've been created with these remarkable biochemical systems that adapt to their stress so they can fly. and they can live to be 30 years of age. So this would be the equivalent to 180 years in human beings. So this means now we have a biological model that we can look at and mimic and create new technology and apply it to human beings. So what are some of the things that we see in bats? Well, they have exceptional control over the length of the telomeres, meaning that their cells can continue to divide without the telomeres shrinking. So this is a key factor in longevity. In addition, they have a mechanism by which their cells repair DNA. Now, we already know about biochemistry and energy medicine that will do the same thing. For example, if you keep your glutathione levels elevated, I'm not making a medical claim about our patches, saying if you happen to use a method like taking an N-acetylcysteine supplement for elevating your glutathione, studies have shown that elevated glutathione in the cell will repair damage to the DNA before the cell divides. And there are other mechanisms as well. So efficient DNA repair. Control of inflammation. Inflammation damages healthy cells, can cause breaks in the DNA, and bats have developed a mechanism to do that. So a method for human beings is controlling stress. If you happen to have a product or a technology that can control stress, then you might have a way to do this. I'm just saying. And then also, if we understand what is driving cancer, the standard definition, of course, is that a cancer-causing substance gets into the cell, mutates the stem cell, and then this replicates into a cancer cell. So again, bats have developed mechanisms for dealing with this. But what about human beings? Keep this moving along. Now, let's again go back to the Bible for a moment, and we want to look to see, is there any evidence for these fantastic ages that are in the Bible? And I would encourage you to do this yourself, and you can use any various AI program to make this easy. ChatGPT, Grok 4, whichever one you care to, but make it very easy. So first, you can get a list of all the names that are mentioned in the book of Genesis, along with their corresponding ages, and then this is the list that you'll get. And you'll notice, of course, immediately a trend to where the age starts at 930 with Adam, and then goes down to 205. Now we'll plot this on a graph, and you see right away that we have an outlier there in the data, with Enoch at 365 years old. Now what does the Bible tell us about Enoch? It tells us that he never died, that God took him. So we remove Enoch from the data, and now we smooth out this curve because it's an outlier. So the next outlier that we want to look at is Noah. And the reason is because that's the point at which ages in the Bible start to decline. And we know that's when the flood occurred. So Noah and then his son Shem. Noah was 600 years old when he entered the ark before the flood. Shem was 98 years old. So Noah lived to be a total of 950, Shem 600. That's very interesting. So we might say, were the conditions that people lived in on the earth different before the flood than after a flood that attribute to this change in lifespan? We might be able to form any number of different theories or hypotheses about this, but it's worth reflecting and thinking about. In any case, we take these ages and we spread them out over time, and we can now ask AI, is this decline in aging statistically significant? Are these just random data points, or is this a statistically significant decay curve? And it turns out that these aren't random numbers at all, that this is a biological decay curve, meaning that we can rely on these ages in the Bible as being true and factual. So we know people lived to be over 900 years old before the flood. Now we just have to figure out why. So the short version of this is that there's evidence that the ages in the book of Genesis are true and factual. So people have already lived to be over 900 years old. So we can, if that's the case, then we can look at how to create technology to duplicate this. And we can look at further evidence. So let's go back now and see what's in the current scientific literature. Is there any evidence that humans can be regenerated to a more youthful state? So you can do the research yourself, or you can ask AI, depending on how you want to do this. So as it turns out, there are many things that we can do today that have an influence on our lifespan. One of them is fasting and calorie restriction. This is going to do two things. Number one, it's going to help clear out zombie cells from the body, and it's also going to reduce the amount of oxidative and inflammatory stress that we experience. So calorie restriction and fasting are known to be methods that we can use to increase our health span and our lifespan. Exercise. Exercise is perhaps one of the most reliable ways of improving longevity. We know that most people, when they get to age 70, they experience sarcopenia, muscle wasting, and because they haven't committed to a life of exercise, that means now also their bone density is going to decrease and make them more susceptible to injury that they may not recover from. In addition, studies have shown that we can use very specific methods of cardiovascular training, which I'm going to teach you during the course of the next 2 days. 80 seconds of the correct type of cardio training per week is enough to cause regeneration in the human heart. And if there's anyone here that can't exercise for 80 seconds a week, I invite you to leave now. But please stay. Okay. Another method that's incredibly simple, this was discovered by Dr. Bruce Ames, on the combination of acetyl L-carnitine and alpha-lipoic acid. This combination, both in vitro and in human beings, has shown to boost mitochondrial function and in turn cause older cells to look and function like younger, healthier cells. Oxytocin, the hormone of love. We speak about this frequently at LifeWave, that if we can elevate our oxytocin levels, we can regenerate the muscle tissue in the body back to a younger, healthier state. Yeah. I'll go for that. So we simply adopt an attitude of love and kindness towards others. This has the benefit that we reduce stress on our system. And doesn't matter if you're 70, 80 years old and above, elevating oxytocin causes those older muscle cells to regenerate to younger, healthier cells. Copper peptide. Copper peptide will reset 1/3 of the human genome back to a younger, healthier state. So we very clearly have evidence that age reversal, again, is possible with a simple peptide. Carnosine. So supplementation with carnosine, or beta-alanine, which is the precursor to carnosine, in studies going back 20 years, has shown that this will help to protect the telomeres from degradation, and in experiments with mammals, with mice and rats, there have been 30 to 40% increases in human lifespan. In lifespan in mammals, in those rodents. So now we can see that we have multiple methods that we can employ on a daily basis that are very simple, that will have a practical impact on our age. Glutathione, consistently in human beings that live to be over the age of 100, one thing that they all have in common is their glutathione levels, and it's very understandable why. Glutathione is the body's master antioxidant. It protects the cells from oxidative inflammatory stress and helps to repair damage to DNA. So for example, you go out in the sun, you get too much exposure to the sun, and you get breaks in the DNA. Glutathione will regenerate and repair the DNA before the cell divides, not passing that mutation on to a future cell. This is very well known in the literature. And restoring NAD. So a lot of the work that's being done today on age reversal is looking at precursors to NAD, such as NMN and NR, and even niacin. Just for regular basic vitamin B3 niacin is a precursor to NAD and can help support your NAD levels. We found in our studies with X2O that the X2O water will initiate increases in NAD levels. More on that later. So what can we take from all of this? Well, in the scientific community, some of the consensus is that human lifespan is limited to 120 years. But also, there are scientists that think that there is no upper limit to human lifespan, or maybe that will peak out around 1,000 years. There's species on this planet that defy normal aging, so we can use this information and we can use these species as a biological model for applying what we learn over to human beings. There's evidence that the ages in the Bible are true and factual. There's scientific evidence that it's possible to reverse the age of human cells. So, up next, we're going to talk about life waves.
One more time, Lynn. Come on, tell me it again. So,
the whole story, or just
Dr. Lonnie
make it
Herman,
shorter,
he's
shorter.
here
Just
with
say,
his mother.
I had
Get together so I can get how great this is. This is like,
had open
isn't
heart
this great? Let me
surgery.
get, hang on. Smile like you're happy to be here.
open heart surgery 15 years
Open
ago.
heart surgery in
Now it's time for
2009,
another.
second heart attack in 2012.
Okay.
Went to a new cardiologist. He did an
Echo.
echo,
Yep.
came back. PA said to me, "What are you doing, Mrs. Seagraves? Your heart is reversing. You're supposed to have additional heart disease at your age, and you have none. All your tests are coming back perfect." I said,
Wow.
I'm patching.
I'm patching.
Patches are doing it.
Yeah, I love it when she
That's
says, I
what's
pull
doing.
up the shirt on the belly.
Pulled up the
I
shirt,
show him on the back of
showed
the
my
neck.
back of the neck, showed my belly, showed my hand, showed my ankle,
And they're now they got the information.
and now they have the information, and hopefully they'll do something with it.
I love it. Thank you for sharing, Lynn.
You're welcome.
Cheers. 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 Cheers to
you know? I guess matter. Where you from? Kaya. What you do? All the manners that you kind, spread love, and posit. Me tell you, you are love. I love you. I could do anything. Go get it. I love you.
Thank you.